In some vast stone cathedrals, measured reverberation can exceed 6 seconds, depending on frequency and occupancy. These buildings did not only contain worship. Their surfaces and volumes also shaped voices, chant, and silence. The deeper question is how delayed reflections changed what distant listeners could hear, follow, and remember. In a large church, sound arrives directly, then returns through reflections traveling along longer paths. The same height and hard surfaces that create grandeur may also reduce verbal clarity, especially at greater distances. A cathedral is not one echo chamber. It is a connected system of volumes, surfaces, openings, and delays. Welcome to Lantern History, where architecture helps us uncover the physical logic behind the past. In this video, we will examine how geometry, materials, and ritual use may have shaped cathedral sound. Architectural details may influence local reflection and scattering, but their acoustic importance varies with scale and position. Medieval builders lacked modern acoustic equations, but repeated practice and spatial judgment still produced audible consequences. The result was never uniform. A sound clear near its source could become less distinct farther away. To understand why this happens, we must move beyond visual beauty and examine the physics of the room. The source stops, yet the cathedral keeps speaking. That fading afterlife is what acousticians call reverberation. Reverberation time estimates how long a room's sound level takes to fall by 60 decibels after the source ends. Occupied symphonic halls often sit near 2 seconds at mid-frequencies. Great cathedrals may sustain sound much longer. The first major factor is volume. A cathedral encloses an immense body of air. Reverberation tends to grow when enclosed volume is large relative to the room's total absorption. Absorption changes with surfaces, furnishings, textiles, and the number of occupants present. Bare stone, marble, glass, and hard plaster usually absorb little. Wood varies greatly with construction. Then geometry determines when, and from which directions, reflected energy returns to a listening position. When reflections arrive close together, the auditory system may fuse them instead of hearing separate echoes. The result is a sustained reverberant bloom, many arrivals perceived as one continuous decay. That bloom may support sustained monophonic singing, yet blur rapid or overlapping vocal lines.
When notes and consonants overlap, detail can be lost. Next, we trace where the architecture sends each reflection.
A cathedral does not return sound evenly. Its geometry decides where reflections travel, gather, and fade. The long nave can strengthen axial reflections, while energy also escapes into aisles, chapels, and the vault. At the crossing, transepts can add delayed lateral returns and coupled volume, changing spaciousness by position. Aisles, chapels, galleries, and deep recesses can receive and return energy at different times. Concave apses may concentrate reflections at particular points, while piers and openings disrupt any perfect focus. Move through the apse, and clarity may shift as direct sound and reflected energy recombine. Vault webs, ribs, curvature, and joints create a complex, hard ceiling that returns sound unevenly. The ribs are structural and reflective, but evidence does not show that medieval builders aimed them acoustically. Pier profiles and carved details can scan shorter wavelengths, but their influence is modest beside the whole room. Vertical layers, side spaces, and changing widths make cathedral acoustics far more local than a simple rectangular hall. Screens, stalls, and raised speaking positions could alter absorption, separation, and which nearby zones received clearer sound. At Notre-Dame, this geometry met one of medieval Europe's most consequential cultures of liturgy and polyphony. Polyphony did not begin at Notre-Dame, but here, earlier practices grew in scale, organization, and rhythmic complexity. Its medieval acoustic state cannot be measured directly. It must be reconstructed from architecture, furnishings, and historical evidence. In 2015, researchers measured impulse responses at several source and receiver positions inside Notre-Dame. Those measurements helped calibrate an acoustic digital twin for testing alternative historical and restoration states. Plainchant is monophonic, one melodic line, even when many voices perform it together. Polyphony combines independent lines. The Notre-Dame School expanded their scale, organization, and rhythmic complexity. Later sources associate léonine and perrotin with organum, and increasingly organized rhythmic practice at Notre-Dame. The room mattered, but so did liturgy, notation, specialist training, patronage, and the cathedral's institutions. Long tones may gain support, while rapid passages risk overlap. Performance can adapt through tempo, articulation, spacing, and position. Near the choir, direct sound is stronger. Farther west, late reverberation takes a larger share. Measurements and modeling suggest clearer speech near some preaching positions than in distant parts of the nave. Next, we leave Gothic Paris for a measured English Baroque effect, the Whispering Gallery. A whisper should disappear in this vast dome. At St. Paul's, it can travel around the curved gallery wall. The Whispering Gallery circles the inner dome, roughly 30 meters above the cathedral floor. Rayleigh described sound concentrated near the smooth circular boundary, weakening toward the gallery's center. Energy can circle clockwise and counterclockwise, reaching the same listener through paths of different length. Measurements show direction matters. Aiming along the wall strengthens repeated returns, while aiming at the listener improves clarity. Curvature alone is insufficient. Smoothness, continuity, frequency, source position, and listener position all matter. Ambulatories and processional routes changed source and listener positions, but were not necessarily designed as acoustic devices. At Chartres, volume, stone, glass, chapels, furnishings, and occupancy combine into a different acoustic system. A smaller parish church often gives shorter paths and faster decay, though materials and occupancy can reverse that expectation. Scale matters, but furnishings and occupancy can shorten decay by adding absorption that bare stone lacks. Long decay may support music, while reinforcement improves speech. Every intervention renegotiates clarity, ceremony, and heritage. Then Notre-Dame's fire forced a harder question. When the building changes physically, can its acoustic identity survive? 1 year after the fire, construction site measurements found Notre-Dame's reverberation roughly 20% shorter than in 2015. The fire destroyed most of the timber roof and left 3 large openings in the stone vaults. With openings above the nave, sound could couple differently to the damaged upper volume and outside air. Pews, carpeting, small risers, scaffolding, barriers, and construction conditions also differed between the 2015 and 2020 surveys. Researchers compared archived balloon bursts from 1987, a detailed 2015 survey, and post-fire measurements made in 2020. Even before the fire, reverberation differed by about 8%. Later carpeting was among the likely contributors. Some decay curves bent into early and late regimes, consistent with energy exchanged among coupled volumes. In restricted zones, a remote-controlled robot pulled microphone tripods through the damaged nave. Pre-fire measurements calibrated a digital acoustic twin, preserving a testable model of the cathedral's earlier response. Recreating the same forms cannot guarantee the same sound. Surface condition, furnishings, openings, and systems all matter. A valid before and after test must match source, receiver, frequency, occupancy, temperature, configuration, and measurement method. The fire changed the boundaries. Next, we ask why stone, glass, timber, and textiles treat sound so differently. The stone does not remember the note. It reflects much of the energy, and the room keeps it moving. At every encounter, some energy reflects, while smaller portions are absorbed, transmitted, or scattered. The same wall can reflect, vibrate, transmit, or scatter differently as frequency and wavelength change. A cathedral wall is not one sample. Stone, mortar, joints, backing, cavities, and thickness act together. Stained glass is often reflective, yet pane size, thickness, leadwork, and mounting alter vibration and transmission. Solid stalls, thin panels, roof boards, joints, and cavities give timber no single acoustic signature. In porous textiles, oscillating air loses energy through viscous and thermal effects between fibers and inside tiny passages. A small banner may change little. Broad coverage, folds, cushions, carpets, and occupancy can shorten late decay. Over long paths, air also removes energy, especially at higher frequencies, with temperature and humidity shaping the loss. Surface detail scatters sound only when its scale is acoustically relevant. Tiny carvings kinks cannot control the whole nave. Cleaning, repointing, replacement stone, glazing, and new textiles may alter response, but appearance alone cannot predict the result. Next, calibrated sources, microphones, laser scans, models, and uncertainty turn invisible decay into evidence. An echo is invisible, but it leaves a measurable fingerprint, the room impulse response. A calibrated source excites the room. Microphones record how direct sound and reflections arrive over time. A logarithmic sine sweep provides repeatable broadband excitation and can separate the room response from some non-linear distortion. The first arrival is direct. Early reflections shape clarity and spaciousness, while the late field forms reverberation. Reverberation time alone is not enough. Clarity, definition, strength, and speech transmission describe different parts of the experience. Move the source or microphone, and the measured response changes, sometimes substantially, within the same cathedral. A spherical microphone array can estimate when reflected energy arrives and from which directions. Laser scanning captures geometry, not acoustics. The sound model still needs materials, sources, and measured calibration. Material coefficients are not universal truths. Frequency, mounting, coverage, and backing can change the effective response. Calibration adjusts uncertain model inputs until simulated and measured responses agree within stated tolerances, not perfectly everywhere. Auralization filters a dry signal through a measured or simulated impulse response, making an acoustic hypothesis audible. Measurement reduces uncertainty. It does not erase it. Next, we ask what these reconstructions can truly prove about the past. The past did not leave us a recording. It left stone, documents, objects, and traces that must be tested together. Measured, documented, modeled, reconstructed, and speculative claims do not carry the same evidential weight. Every measurement belongs to a particular building state: source, receiver, frequency range, occupancy, and environment. Plans, inventories, fabric, liturgy, and surviving objects can narrow the possibilities without eliminating uncertainty. A model does not declare what happened. It asks what would follow if a defined historical state were true. When small input changes produce large acoustic differences, the historical conclusion must remain especially cautious. The choir, crossing, side aisle, chapel, and western nave could belong to different acoustic worlds at the same moment. Tempo, articulation, spacing, source arrangement, and position can adapt to a room without proving the room created the music. An architectural feature may affect sound without having been designed specifically for that acoustic effect. A strong explanation must survive competing hypotheses, alternative models, and measurements from positions where its prediction could fail. Evidence can identify likely ranges, pathways, positional differences, and consequences without recovering one perfect historical sound. Now we return to the opening sound, not to replay one perfect past, but to ask what the cathedral ultimately made possible. The final answer is not echo. It is a system of volume, surfaces, openings, source, listener, and time. Structure did not route sound like machinery. It made the vast volume and hard boundaries acoustics would inhabit. The acoustic state changed whenever screens, stalls, textiles, occupancy, openings, or source positions changed. These spaces supported monumental liturgy and sustained sound. Clarity still varied with distance, direction, and position. What survives is not one recovered sound, but a constrained range of mechanisms, states, and listening experiences. Lantern history builds each reconstruction from scholarship, site reports, measurements, and clearly marked uncertainty. In the comments, tell us which cathedral or smaller church changed the way you heard architecture.
Subscribe to Lantern History for evidence-led stories about the hidden engineering of the past.
Next, we open another machine of the past, buildings that controlled climate and water without modern power. One sharp sound, several seconds of decay, a whole architectural system revealed after the source is gone. The stone was never speaking alone. Air, surface, geometry, use, and listener made the whole room answer.